Welcome to Alternatify, the channel where we delve into the pivotal moments of history and dare to ask, what if? We explore the tantalizing possibilities that lie just beyond the veil of our known past, unraveling the threads of destiny to weave new narratives. Our journey today takes us to a battlefield etched into the annals of time, a place where the fate of a continent hung in the balance. We are rewriting the Battle of Waterloo, not as a crushing defeat, but as a resounding victory for Napoleon Bonaparte. Imagine the thunderous cheers of the Imperial Guard, the retreat of the Allied forces, and the triumphant return of the Emperor to Paris. This single alteration, a mere shift in the winds of war, promises seismic ripple effects across Europe, reshaping empires and fundamentally altering the trajectory of the modern world. The anticipated impact of such a victory is almost unfathomable, extending far beyond the immediate political landscape. We will explore the profound economic consequences, the cultural transformations, and even the technological advancements that might have unfolded in this radically different timeline. Prepare to journey into a world that never was, a testament to the delicate balance of historical events. Our scope of exploration is vast, encompassing the political machinations that would follow, the economic shifts that would redefine global power, and the cultural currents that would sweep across a Napoleonic Europe. We will also consider the technological innovations that might have been accelerated or stifled under such a dominant regime. This is not just a thought experiment, it is an immersive dive into an alternate reality. To truly appreciate the magnitude of a Napoleonic victory, we must first understand the historical reality of Waterloo. The year is 1815, and Napoleon, having escaped from Elba, has returned to France, igniting the 100 Days and sending shockwaves across Europe. His audacious return to power set the stage for a final desperate gamble. The key combatants were formidable. Napoleon, the military genius, pitted against the Duke of Wellington, leading a multinational Allied army, and Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher, commanding the Prussian forces. The battle was a clash of titans, a desperate struggle for supremacy that would determine the future of a continent. Each commander brought their unique strengths and weaknesses to the field. Several critical factors contributed to Napoleon's historical defeat. The torrential rain of the previous night turned the battlefield into a muddy quagmire, hindering French artillery and cavalry charges. Tactical errors, such as costly frontal assaults against Wellington's well-defended positions, further depleted French strength. Crucially, the timely and unexpected arrival of Blücher's Prussian forces on Napoleon's flank sealed his fate. The historical outcome is well known: Napoleon's final crushing defeat. This catastrophic loss led to his second abdication and ultimate exile to the remote island of St. Helena, where he would live out his remaining years. Waterloo marked the definitive end of the Napoleonic Wars and ushered in a new era for Europe, one dominated by the concert of Europe and a fragile peace. Now, let us imagine the subtle shifts that could have tipped the scales in Napoleon's favor. Consider altered weather conditions. What if the ground had been drier, allowing French artillery to deploy earlier and more effectively, softening Wellington's lines before the infantry assault? This seemingly minor change could have dramatically altered the battle's opening phases. Another pivotal factor could have been a delayed Prussian intervention. If Blücher's forces had been held up, perhaps by more determined French rearguard actions or unforeseen logistical challenges, Napoleon might have had sufficient time to decisively defeat Wellington's army before the Prussians arrived. A sequential victory would have been far more manageable. Improved tactical decisions by Napoleon himself could also have secured victory. What if he had avoided the costly frontal assaults against the formidable British squares, opting instead for more flexible and flanking maneuvers? A more nuanced approach, leveraging his cavalry and artillery with greater precision, might have broken the Allied lines without such heavy losses. Finally, a more focused and decisive leadership from Napoleon could have made all the difference. Despite his genius, Napoleon was not infallible. A clearer chain of command, swifter responses to battlefield developments, and an unwavering resolve could have galvanized his troops to push through the Allied resistance. A single moment of hesitation or misjudgment could have been avoided. With Napoleon victorious at Waterloo, the immediate aftermath would have been nothing short of revolutionary. The Allied coalition, already strained by years of warfare and internal disagreements, would have collapsed under the weight of such a decisive defeat. Britain, now isolated and facing immense pressure, would have been forced to negotiate a humiliating peace, abandoning its continental allies. Napoleon's dominance would have become undisputed, his legend cemented as the greatest military commander in history. This victory would have provided him with the ultimate mandate to consolidate his power, potentially leading to the formation of a unified European empire under French hegemony. The dream of a single, powerful European state, long harbored by Napoleon, would be within his grasp. Significant territorial realignments would inevitably follow. Nations that had opposed him would face severe punishment, perhaps through annexations or the imposition of puppet regimes. Loyal allies, such as the Confederation of the Rhine states, would be rewarded with expanded territories and greater influence. The map of Europe would be redrawn, reflecting the new balance of power. Crucially, the widespread implementation of Napoleonic legal and administrative reforms would accelerate across the continent. The Napoleonic Code, with its emphasis on equality before the law, property rights and secularism, would become the standard, replacing antiquated feudal systems. This would lay the groundwork for a more uniform, centralized European legal framework, profoundly impacting daily life. A Napoleonic victory at Waterloo would have delivered a severe, perhaps irreparable blow to British prestige and global influence. The nation that had stood as Napoleon's most persistent and formidable foe would have been humbled, its military might questioned, and its diplomatic standing diminished. This defeat would resonate across the globe, challenging Britain's perceived invincibility. The economic hardship and social unrest within Britain would be profound. The long wars had already strained the national treasury, and a forced peace, likely involving indemnities or unfavorable trade agreements, would exacerbate these issues. Unemployment, food shortages, and a disillusioned populace could lead to widespread civil unrest, challenging the very fabric of British society. Threats to British colonial control would emerge, possibly with direct French support for rebellions in key territories. Napoleon, ever the opportunist, would likely seek to undermine British power wherever possible, perhaps by encouraging independence movements in India or supporting American expansionism. The global balance of power would shift dramatically, favoring France. Internally, Britain would be forced to confront its domestic issues with renewed urgency. The defeat might spur significant political and social reforms, perhaps even a re-evaluation of its imperial ambitions. The focus would shift from external dominance to internal stability, potentially leading to a more introspective and less interventionist foreign policy in the long run. Under Emperor Napoleon, the structure of this victorious empire would be highly centralized and authoritarian. Power would emanate directly from Paris, with Napoleon at its apex, ruling through a network of loyal administrators and client states. The ideals of the French Revolution, albeit filtered through an imperial lens, would continue to shape governance. The empire would likely continue its expansion and unification efforts across Europe. Napoleon's vision was not merely conquest, but the creation of a cohesive, modern European system. This might involve further annexations, the creation of new kingdoms ruled by his family members, and the gradual integration of diverse cultures under a single dominant French identity. Economic reforms and massive infrastructure development would be hallmarks of this empire. Napoleon understood the importance of efficient transportation and trade. We would see an accelerated construction of roads, canals, and bridges, facilitating commerce and military movement across the continent. This would lay the groundwork for a more integrated European economy. The promotion of French culture and intellectual ideas would become a dominant force. French would likely become the lingua franca of diplomacy, science, and high culture across Europe. Parisian fashion, art, literature, and philosophical thought would exert unparalleled influence, shaping the intellectual landscape of the continent and beyond. A victorious Napoleonic Empire could have significantly accelerated technological innovation, particularly in military and industrial sectors. With a unified continent and vast resources at his disposal, Napoleon might have invested heavily in new weaponry, logistics and manufacturing techniques. The drive for military superiority would fuel rapid advancements. The spread of the Industrial Revolution across Europe would likely be much faster. With French dominance, trade barriers would diminish, and standardized systems would encourage the adoption of new technologies and production methods. Factories and steam power would proliferate, transforming economies and societies at an unprecedented pace. French cultural dominance would be undeniable, permeating art, literature, and music. The neoclassical style favored by Napoleon might have continued to flourish, while French literary movements would set trends across the continent. Composers might have found patronage in Paris, their works reflecting the grandeur and ambition of the empire. However, this era would also be marked by a complex interplay of flourishing romanticism and nationalism, alongside state propaganda and censorship. While artistic expression might thrive in certain forms, any dissent or criticism of the imperial regime would be swiftly suppressed. The tension between individual liberty and state control would be a defining characteristic. The long-term consequences of a Napoleonic victory would ripple through centuries, fundamentally altering global conflicts. The balance of power would be irrevocably shifted, potentially leading to entirely different alliances and rivalries. The world wars as we know them might never have occurred, or they might have taken on vastly different forms, perhaps with a unified Europe facing off against other global powers. Even the Cold War dynamics would be unrecognizable. Without the same historical trajectory, the rise of communism, the specific ideological divides, and the geopolitical alignments would be entirely different. The very concept of nation-states and international relations would have evolved along a divergent path, leading to an unrecognizable 20th century. However, this alternate history also presents a significant dark side. The triumph of Napoleon would likely usher in an era of pervasive authoritarianism, with centralized control and limited individual freedoms. Constant warfare, driven by imperial ambition or the suppression of internal revolts, could plague the continent, leading to immense human cost. Economic instability, despite initial growth, could arise from the sheer scale of the empire and the burden of maintaining such a vast military. The suppression of dissent, the stifling of independent thought, and the potential for widespread surveillance would create a society where conformity was paramount. This is a world of grand ambition, but also of profound human cost. Napoleon's legacy, even in our own history, is complex. A military genius, a political innovator, and undeniably a ruthless tyrant. In this alternate reality, his victory at Waterloo amplifies both his brilliance and his darker tendencies, creating a world of unprecedented unity and progress, but also of pervasive control and potential oppression. It forces us to confront the true cost of unchecked power. This thought experiment is a reminder of how fragile and contingent our history truly is, how a single battle, a single decision, can send ripples across centuries. We invite you to share your thoughts on this what-if scenario. What other consequences do you foresee? How might this world have evolved further? Your insights enrich our collective exploration. What other historical turning points would you like us to explore? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this journey into an alternate past as intriguing as we did, please like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe to Alternatify for more captivating explorations of the worlds that never were. Join our community as we continue to unravel the mysteries of history's road not taken.